Howdy, folks. Welcome back or welcome aboard. You have just heard our very own personal rendition of Rock Around the Clock with Doc. Sort of.
That's right.
Yep.
We are very glad you're here. You are listening to the Doc Owen Show. My name is Dr. Richard Owen. I am joined in the Hilltop Studios by...
I'm a surefire.
Uncle Bachi.
And we are ready to close out a calendar year. I have to do that very specifically because the show's year, as you'll note from the very beginning of the show, it says Y5.17. That means, for those of you not familiar, new to the show, year 5, our 17th show. So technically, we're kind of on a physical year that starts on September the 11th every year because we started on September the 11th, 2012, and have been going nonstop once a week ever since then. We might have skipped a week here, there, and yonder, but they are very here, there, and yonder, and there's always a good reason, like San Antonio being snowed out one night.
That's right. No power at all.
But we don't have to expect that again until you see Y35.15, because it only happens like once every 30 years.
That's
We
true.
are all over social media as Doc Owen Show, DOCOWENSHOW. The primary place to kind of keep track of what's going on, it seems to react the fastest, is our Twitter handle, which is Doc Owen Show, because the minute we go live, we tweet the fact that the Doc Owen Show is live, and you can click on the link that's provided and listen to us live. On Facebook, on our blog, which is docowenshow.com, everything is after the fact, so you'll be listening to the show more as a podcast and about an hour off, which is really somewhat inconsequential because it's not like we take live phone calls or there's any reason for you to. The main thing we want you to do is to get the message.
That's
so
true.
we don't care when you get it. We are, we've been doing this 5 years. And by the way, I need to bring this up right now. There's another guy in San Antonio that has started a radio show. And about 5 years ago, to be exact, he sort of promoted me to go do this and yada, yada. And then I jumped out there, started to do it, and he withdrew his sponsorship, et cetera. So I wound up, footing the bill for it, which is fine. I was dedicated to the project. Mm-hmm. But he has started up, and he is giving, he has some restaurants here in town, and he's giving away free dinner to the first 30 people that show up. Because he broadcasts from his restaurant. Mm-hmm. So you get free dinner for the first 30 people that show up. Well, that's a little embarrassing. So I had to do something. But on the budget that we're on, what we do is I give away dinner to the first 3 people that show up. So Alma, Uncle Bachi, and myself have dinner before the show.
That's right.
Every week, and it's no charge. There you go.
And sometimes I cook it, and sometimes I don't.
Not to be outdone. We're going to go over basically our physical year. In other words, I'm going to go through all of the shows that started with Y4. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I've got a little bit of information, and we'll reminisce about some of them and see what we learned and see where it led us and see whether we were right or wrong or that sort of thing. Before we get into tonight's show, we begin every show in a very traditional manner. Ms. Surefire leads us off with an inspirational quote. Uncle Bachi follows it up with something having to do with this day in history at some point in the past. And then I close out that threesome with a leadership quote. So, Ms. Surefire, take it away.
And tonight's quote comes from a place that I quote from sometimes, not too often. This one is from www.bbc.co.uk. dictionary.com. And tonight's quote comes from someone, we just don't know who, because it says author unknown.
Huh.
So
they couldn't spell anonymous.
That's right.
Okay. All right.
We
Yeah,
know
they're
about
always the best
anonymous.
ones.
Yeah.
Usually they are.
We know anonymous too. Yeah. So the quote is, when you start seeing your worth, you'll find it harder to stay around people who don't.
Ooh,
Boom.
that's true too.
If I'd have said that, I wouldn't want anybody to know it either. That's right. Author unknown.
Okay.
So can we quote you on that? Don't you dare. That's a good one. So say it again.
When you start seeing your worth, you'll find it harder to stay around people who don't.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Well done.
Very true.
Good dig. Uncle Bocce,
Yes.
anything of note in our historical past, my good fellow?
Yeah, I've got one for today, and I picked out one for tomorrow too. So
We're not on tomorrow.
yeah, I know, but we're going to be. So today, December 28th in 1869 was America's first celebration of Labor Day. It was by a group of a union of tailors who were called the Knights of Labor.
Of course.
Yeah, and they celebrated. They had celebrations and ceremonies for that day, but it wasn't until 1894 that Congress actually designated the first Monday of September as a national holiday.
That's like lightning speed for Congress. It only took 25 years.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
The speed of light.
Unbelievable.
The reason why
You may have, go ahead.
No.
You may have to, but now, 1869 by the Tailors Union.
Yeah, just by that one group. Yeah.
Okay. You realize
that
who our
sparked the movement.
audience is, right? I mean, we speak primarily to millennials.
Yes.
What's a tailor?
Oh, gee whiz. A guy who makes suits and all that kind of stuff. Or woman.
There you go.
A seamstress.
Yeah. And or the person that hangs out at the clothing store that does your alternations.
Alterations, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. They don't really. What's a tailor? I mean, either the jeans fit or they don't.
They don't. There you go. Okay. Okay.
Go ahead.
Yep.
All right. Now, the reason I picked tomorrow as a day in history is because it fits in with our lesson tonight.
Okay.
Okay. 1845. Guess who entered the Union? Texas.
Texas.
Ah.
Texas became a state, and we'll see in our lesson tonight that John Tyler had something to do with that.
Okay.
Okay, so I just thought I'd bring that up.
Good segue.
Yeah,
That's it?
that's it for today.
That's it for today. Our leadership quote tonight is from my little book of 250 optimistic quotes from the Optimist Club, and it's in a section that is referred to as integrity, which is a part of the overall group of leadership quotes. All right? And this is from a fellow by the name of Thomas Fuller. Mr. Fuller died in 1661. So this was he was an old timer. Some of his stuff, some of his other quotes sound vaguely like Yogi Berra may have read a lot of Fuller. They're a little obvious.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Like Yogi would say, when you come to a fork in the road, take it. So Mr. Fuller said, he does not believe that does not act according to his belief.
Oh. He does not believe.
Who does not act according to his belief.
Wow, that's a tricky one, isn't it?
Think politician.
Oh, forget that.
Exactly.
See?
And the topic...
I'm a good straight man, aren't I?
yes. and the topic is integrity.
Yeah.
Okay?
Okay.
So truly that's the definition of, say what you mean what you say, and act accordingly. Mm-hmm. And that's basically what this is saying. If you don't act it, then you don't really believe it.
Good.
Okay.
Good.
So I'd already kind of let the cat out of the bag that we're going to be talking about this past year. I think you will be, you may or may not be, pleasantly surprised at some of the guests that we had on the show last year. We always have, we're lucky enough, and actually Ms. Surefire is diligent enough to make sure that we get telephone conversations with some really cool individuals, and we usually do it at least once a month, sometimes twice a month. Mm-hmm. And we'll continue to do that in 2018 to branch out. Exactly.
Yep.
And and the nice part about this review is I will give you, so if you don't already have your pencil and pad handy to take notes of what Uncle Bocce is about to educate us on, then you will definitely want to have that as we do the year in review, because I will give you the exact number, and you can go out to our app, which I failed to mention, for either the iPhone or the Android. We have a free app, and you can go through there and listen to these particular shows as a podcast. Pod means play on demand, is where the language came from. So it's a play on demand cast of our radio show, and you can go straight to the conversation that we had with some of these folks we're going to be referring to. Before we dive into that, Uncle Bocce,
yes, sir.
We kind of left in the middle of President John Tyler, if I remember
number
correctly.
Number 10, yes.
Yep, numero yes.
Yeah.
And so let her rip. Pick up.
All right. So
couple of things to remind us where we came from, and then dive into right where you left off.
Right. First, we're going to look at his domestic policy. But if you remember, John Tyler was William Henry Harrison's vice president.
Correct.
William Henry Harrison died a month into
30 days in.
Yeah. It was actually 31, but yeah.
Okay.
So and there was a lot of controversy about who was going to be president, because John Tyler's opponents did not like the idea of him being president.
Too bad.
So what John
It was
Tyler
already
did,
in the Constitution that he'd be president, right?
That's right.
But they decided they'd prefer to ignore that.
Yep. But he made his first and wisest decision, was very far-reaching, because of all the controversy was going on.
Yep.
He got himself sworn in.
Boom.
Boom. That's it, folks.
Yep. Right there on the plane.
It's over. Yeah. On the plane. Yeah.
Oh, they didn't have a plane.
Okay. So he did that. Now he didn't select a vice president, because it was not yet in the Constitution as to who would be vice president. Now his second decision, however, was as ill-advised as his first had been inspired. So
you kind of set him up when you said it was the most inspired decision he made the entire time. So from that point on, it was straight downhill for Mr. Tyler.
There you go.
Okay.
Okay. Now, what he did was, because he was fearful of appearing disrespectful to Harrison, John Tyler retained the entire dead man's cabinet. Okay? And I'll tell you why that was not a very good decision on his part in a minute. Okay? Eventually, the entire cabinet resigned over Tyler's vetoes of the national bank. Tyler was not a fan of national banking, so he vetoed that bill. The only exception, I think I might have mentioned this week, was Daniel Webster. He remained as Secretary of State for a little while.
I remember you mentioning that, because I made a wisecrack about a book and nobody got it.
Okay. I still don't get it.
Webster's Dictionary, Schmickel.
Yeah.
Oh, you got it? Oh,
yeah. So Tyler, he was not in favor of the national bank. In fact, he felt that it was unconstitutional. And we still have this argument going back and forth with the Federal Reserve. There was another bill that he signed was called the Log Cabin Bill. What that did was it gave settlers the right to claim land before it was for sale. Okay, so they can claim the land and then buy it later for $1.25 an acre.
Okay.
And this helped to get the West movement, the Western settlers, into motion and, and expand the country.
I'm waiting for the punchline.
But no, that's it.
Why was it called the Log Cabin Bill?
Good question. You know what? I never even thought to ask that question.
Did they have to put up a log cabin? Did they have to put a structure on it?
I have to check
clean
that out.
I bet they did.
Yeah,
Check
probably.
Okay.
Okay, then the next thing was, and it was just like 3 days before Tyler left the presidency, he was for the annexation of Texas. To be a part of the United States. So
was Texas for it?
Yeah. Oh, Texas was begging. Andrew Jackson could have done it 10 years earlier, but he didn't want to do it because he was afraid of this, controversy with slave state, not slave. He didn't. Didn't do it.
He didn't want to do it because he wasn't making any money off of it.
Well, probably, yeah, as much as money as he made. But Tyler thought that this would help his reelection bid. Okay. So he signed the Texas statehood in March 1845. And that's when the state became a state. There was also another tariff bill. It helped to protect the northern manufacturers. There was always this thing going on between the northern and the south.
Sure.
It wasn't just slavery. It was the economies. Different set of circumstances.
Industrial versus agrarian.
Exactly.
Manufacturing versus farming, for those of you.
Okay. In the Asian Pacific region, he sent a diplomatic mission to China. How about that? All those years ago, he sent somebody, and it was resulting in commercial and consular relations with the country, giving us the same trading concessions as the British. Okay, so that was a good thing he did.
Were we worried about them knocking off our tea, or?
I have no idea.
Okay.
I don't know if that's any part of it. He also extended the principle of the Monroe Doctrine. You remember what that was, right?
Absolutely, I do. Yeah.
No foreigners in. He extended that to the what is now the state of Hawaii.
When I was a youngster, I remember, youngster being junior high, I remember making a note, and I think I still have the book with the note in the front, about the value of the Monroe Doctrine. Yeah. That the reason it was put together was actually very, very good. But then it, like everything else, got turned around and used for not so good. But anyway, go ahead.
That's fine.
It was put together with the right intent.
Absolutely, it was, yes. And then there were still some Canadian border disputes, and he signed the Webster-Ashburton Treaty, which helped end those border disputes with Canada and the Maine border and all of that.
Good.
As far as Native Americans are concerned, Tyler ended a costly and bloody war against the Seminole Indians in 1842. The Seminoles were tough, and they just they pushed back.
Well, they still are. They've got a hell of a football team.
Well, yeah, they do. You're right. Okay.
Now
let's take a look at some of the impact that he had and his legacy.
Let's do that.
Yeah. Okay. By claiming the right to a fully functioning and empowered presidency, instead of relinquishing the office or accepting limits on his powers, Tyler set a hugely important precedent. Okay, and that was he declared himself president and got sworn in. Okay, so that was very important to a lot of historians.
And I don't understand why it would be in question because of the Constitution, but apparently
it was in question only because there were people who did not like John Tyler, and they did not want him to accede to the presidency.
As we say to the Never Trumpers.
Exactly. Okay, so in the area of transportation, communication, and education, he developed toll roads or turnpikes and canals, which allowed for easier travel and transport goods and services. That was an important thing back then, for those kinds of things. The first telegraph line between Washington and Baltimore happened during his administration. In most of the North, by the mid-1840s.
And back in the day, what a lot of people don't understand nowadays, if you've traveled up on the East Coast, back in the day when that telegraph line was put in, Washington and Baltimore were a lot further apart. Go ahead.
Okay.
They were.
Okay, if you say so. Because the city limits didn't extend, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah,
because we went through an ice age and the globe shrunk, and so.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Closer.
In most of the North, by the mid-1840s, the free primary education was available for all white children. Public high schools were beginning to supplant the private academies, and many colleges were founded in the Midwest. So he encouraged all those things. As far as economics are concerned, he led up the urbanization. The urbanization in the North continued.
Okay,
what I'm trying to say.
Right.
There were new technologies, particularly the power looms, using water power.
Yeah.
And frame spinners, which helped develop the textile industry.
Yeah.
Furniture, firearms, and clocks, and other industries in the North. The labor movement was gaining momentum.
Well, sure.
It wasn't there yet, but it was starting, to gain momentum.
Because of the growth of manufacturing.
Exactly.
And manufacturing plants.
Exactly.
As they used to be called.
Mm-hmm. Now, in the South, plantation agriculture continued. Of course, we know that about the South.
Right.
Okay. Here are some interesting facts. He was born in the same place, Charles City County, Virginia, as his presidential running mate, William Henry Harrison. Isn't that amazing? Came from the same town.
Go to school together?
I don't think so. No, I think they were different ages, but
Okay.
And Tyler tried to help negotiate a compromise between the southern states and the northern states, so there would not be a war.
Yeah.
So he was kind of like, teetering on whatever he could do to prevent a war.
How'd that work out for
Yeah,
him?
it didn't work out too well. He liked big families, hence
Yeah, you
15
said,
kids
right. You said
with
something.
two women
Right.
Wow.
at different times.
Right.
And he had 2 boys that were named John, one with each wife.
That's where George Foreman got it.
Yeah, I guess he did. He must have got it from Tyler. Because he was part of the Confederacy, his death was not recognized by Washington. Okay? By Washington, D.C. So his favorite horse was named General. And the horse was actually buried at his plantation with a gravestone.
Oh.
Yeah. He was given the nickname His Accidency. We went over that before.
Yeah.
The labor unions were legalized under him in 1842.
Ooh.
Okay. He had that treaty with China that I said. In 1842, the first wagon train headed westward via the Oregon Trail.
Okay.
So things are starting to pick up in the West.
Did they name it the Oregon Trail when they headed out or after they got to Oregon?
I think they named it before they even got there.
You do?
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
And grain elevators, or some people call them prairie skyscrapers,
Yeah. Yeah. I like it.
they were also invented during the period of solving the problem of storing
Storage.
and transportation
Right.
for the nation.
Right.
Some of his personality quirks, his character trait of John Tyler can be described as reserved,
Yeah.
charming, elegant, gracious, and courteous, but unable to make small talk with strangers. Yeah, he was not a small talker. It has been speculated that the Myers-Briggs personality type for John Tyler, okay, yeah, John Tyler, is an INTP, which means introversion,
Yeah.
intuition, thinking, and perceiving. So that was his character trait.
Whoa.
Okay. He was modest, reserved, stoic character with a preference to work informally with others as equals.
So actually, he was a perfect vice president
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. He was.
and got
He
thrown
was.
into a role that he didn't ask for,
Yeah.
and really wasn't prepared for.
That's
Well,
it.
just wasn't who he is.
That
Is-
exactly.
is
It
what
just
I
wasn't.
hear you saying, right?
Yeah. To further expand on that, this is the last thing. He was quiet, very analytical.
Yeah.
He was impatient,
Yeah.
but very thoughtful.
Yeah, just like our president today.
Yeah.
Not,
And that's it on John Tyler.
but possibly a lot like Spence. I mean, what's his name?
Pence.
Pence.
Yeah.
Probably,
Mike
yeah.
Pence.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
He appears to be a Tyler. He appears to be
Yeah.
a Tyler-esque sort of
Yes.
a person.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
That's
I mean, I
true.
don't know that that's altogether true.
But
if
so
that's-
far,
but that's
it
the
seems
role.
that
He's,
way.
he's playing that role and playing it pretty well.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's John Tyler. Now, next week, we'll talk about the next election after John Tyler,
Okay.
which he ran in, but unfortunately
Not well.
not well. So, and that would be James K. Polk. We're going to talk about him next week.
We're going through like Neverland
Mm-hmm.
in terms of the presidencies right now. They really didn't make a huge name for themselves,
Right.
or at least they were bookended by guys like Lincoln on the one end, which were coming up to Lincoln, right?
Yeah.
You know, and whoever. I mean, they're not colorful like Jackson and
Right.
their predecessors. We've just got a group of, if I remember the studies, 3 or 4 presidents that they just sort of all blended together and just never seemed to make a name for themselves.
Kind of went with the flow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who are you, man?
I am Uncle Bachi, UNCLEBACI at DocOwenShow.com.
Thank you, Uncle Bachi.
Send me those.
Well
emails.
done, lad.
Yes, sir.
As
Thank
always.
you.
As always.
Thank you.
So, have you had time to keep up the blog during the holidays? Or
Actually-
you've been too busy making lasagna?
Well, I was busy doing that, but I'm
And the
also
meatballs, too.
I'm also
Oh,
working. Yeah, I'm
I
also
was hungry
working
just
on a.
listening to him describe what he'd been doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, but I spent a lot of time organizing a lot of my notes because I'm working on a project that I will not announce now, but I will later. I don't want to commit myself because
You're
it
now
may not
realizing
happen.
how much work it is.
Yes, exactly.
Gotcha.
61 type pages
My
so far of
goodness.
notes. I might end up just making this a book.
Really?
A dissertation, that's what I was thinking
Gaining on it. Gaining on it. Okay, let's dive into a little bit of what we went through last year. And
Let's do it.
let's all 3 of us, you guys chime in as you remember these shows.
of. Okay.
And if you don't, then
Ding dong.
that's fine too. And I'm going to start literally if you go out to either, as I said earlier, if you go to Twitter, you go to our app, or you can go to our host site, which is Spreaker.com, like speaker with an R in it, SPREAKER.com. You can sign up there and search for the Doc Owen Show, and you'll see all of our archive as well as through the free app. So we're going to start with right where we are now. We're at Y5.17, right? So Y4.17 was the end of last year. So because of our start of our year on 9/11, we're 16 shows in by the time we get to the 1st of
The new
January.
year, yeah.
We're 16 shows into what we call our year, kind of like a physical year as
That's
opposed to a
right.
calendar year. The first person that we led off with at Y4.20 was a young lady by the name of Publius Hulda.
I
That's right.
remember her.
Well, Publius Hulda
Yeah.
is the WFA on the original intent of the Constitution of the United States of America. And if you don't know what a WFA is, then you're new to the show. And it stands for World's Foremost Authority. So Publius Hulda is and she has this huge presence in terms of her knowledge and her span of knowledge over what the founding fathers really meant when they put together the Constitution and what each word means within the Constitution. I mean, she has it down cold. She's a former lawyer. She's a retired lawyer. And you think, oh, man, this lady's huge. She's like 4'10" and speaks very, very softly. But you should listen very closely.
Yeah.
She's a sweet lady.
She's a sweet lady.
Yes.
We had her on a couple of times. So so that's Y4.20. And she'll return later on in the year because it was a year when there was a lot of rumbling going on about the Convention of States. And there still is. And Publius presents the alternative to that, which is a thorough understanding of the Constitution as it was originally intended. And it's her contention that if you buy into that, if you are a strict constitutionalist, then there is no reason for the Convention of States. And there's actually a lot of danger in the Convention of States. But not necessarily everybody believes that. That's what Publius put out there, and we gave it as much airtime as we could. That was immediately followed the next week by our first conversation for the year with Nico LaHood. Nico draws a crowd. If you're not familiar, go back and listen to Y4.21. Nico is the district attorney here in Bexar County, Texas, and he's a very bright, young, articulate John F. Kennedy Democrat. Okay,
That's a good way to put it.
And that's
In fact, he's more conservative than John F. K. is, actually.
actually he is, but he refers
yeah.
to himself
Yeah.
as a kind of a JFK Democrat.
Yeah. Good.
Because he and I had to establish the ground rules very early on as to the R and the D and the how we feel about things. But Nico's a good friend. And a good friend of the show.
Absolutely.
And we talk to him. We try to do it about once a month, depending on his schedule and ours. It usually winds up being maybe like 6 weeks. But we're due to have a conversation with him coming up pretty soon.
That's right.
It's election season here in Bexar County, so he has sort of upped the ante in terms of his reaching out and going out there. Normally he's a quiet, hard-driven, tough-working district attorney.
He's out with the community.
Yeah. So we talked several times with Nico, and that was the first one for the year. And then Y427.27, we had a conversation with a couple of people from the Texas Border Patrol.
Oh, yeah.
And our intent, those are always fun. And when I say fun, that means informative. We get information, and actually, if I recall the interview, the conversation that we had was about the difference a president makes in terms of how the Border Patrol was being allowed to do their job, and that things were definitely changing. And I don't know whether you remember that one or not, but it would exactly.
Sure.
Now you're not free to go.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Things have changed and continue to change and tighten up.
Right.
Under President Donald J. Trump. The one immediately following that, Y4.28, we had a conversation with a young man by the name of Andres Holiday.
Yes.
Andres is a friend that we met a couple of years ago when he was the president of the student body at Texas A&M San Antonio, I believe.
Yes.
And he we were in the midst of a mayoral election, and the Doc Owen show was following the mayoral election, the local elections, and we were going everywhere we could to broadcast and, be involved, et cetera. We were doing a lot of local activities, intentional, before we have taken the path that we've taken. And I was very impressed with Andres because he was the first mayoral candidate forum who invited and had all of the candidates there.
Yes.
Yes.
Right?
I remember that very clearly.
And I mean, I do too.
Yeah.
Because you'd have one
Huge
put up,
stage.
you'd have one put on by, the local newspaper, and they had their 2 or 3 favorites up on stage, and everybody else was just obviously, if they weren't endorsed by the newspaper, then they were not a serious candidate. And I remember standing up in front of that one and calling attention to all the other candidates that were in the back of the room,
Yeah.
handing out their posters and leaflets. But Andres impressed me as the president of the student body by making sure everyone was included.
Yes.
And he has continued to do those sorts of things here in town with a Chamber of Commerce thing that he did, and now he's spun off and doing something else again. But we had him on specifically to talk about his age group, which is right in the heart of the millennials. I think Andres is probably in his mid to late 20s.
Yeah, probably more mid than late. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean he's a really young guy with a very mature thought process.
Absolutely.
I mean, he
Absolutely.
thinks way out there, and so
does.
we wanted to deliver our message through one of your own.
Yeah.
Another millennial. So Andres Holiday is somebody I would love for you to listen to. I'm going to give it to you again. Y4.28. And it's ANDRES. Andres, and then Holiday with 2 L's. But I think you'll enjoy the conversation. It was a very good interview. We had a good time. And he made a couple,
Oh, yeah.
I remember him saying a couple of things. It's like, man, I wish I'd have
Very
said
impressive,
that.
yes.
Wished I'd have thought of that. He looks at things very interesting.
Yeah.
He's a bright young man. The next one was Y4.29, and the title of the show was New Cool High School. And I remember, I can't remember the lady's name, but she's a PhD out of Texas A&M.
Oh, yes.
And she has started a new high school here in town. So it's a private high school, but I think you're the one that found that. Do you remember what? I mean, it's not a tech high school. It is.
It's something to do with the connection of the community and technology.
There you go.
And it's a new concept.
Yes, that's right. I remember that now.
It was supported by business and supported
Yes,
by
Yes.
the community.
Yes. I
HEB,
go back and listen to
it's a
that
big
one because that was good.
It was a good. It
Yeah.
was very good, and she's doing quite well. The
Good
school
for
itself
her.
is doing real well. The local energy company is supporting it, so I mean they're getting it done that they want to get done. So that's Y4.29. That's you're right. I couldn't think of it. Then we just did shows. We talked about nuclear war. We talked about current events. We talked about things that were going on, and several of those. That was when it was real hyped up about Korea, and we're going to go to war. We're going to blah blah blah. So then we had Y4.34 was about the campus rape frenzy, and we had was it a guy that had written a book about it, right? And it was all about, and literally the numbers were astonishing. If you are charged, if you're not charged, if you are accused of rape as a male student, you're guilty. You're done. Get out of school. That's their charter. That's the charter of the police. That's the charter of the investigative people on campus. They want absolutely nothing to do with it, and there is no way to prove you're innocent.
Wow.
You are kicked out of school without ever having a judge or a jury or anything involved. The school, and that's why it's
So
called
anybody can just come forward with an accusation, and that's it.
and you're done.
And you don't even know who the person is, right?
That's correct.
Oh, well, okay.
That's what's going on a lot of campuses.
Yeah.
right here in the state of Texas.
That's horrible.
Yeah,
No justice.
It is horrible.
It
and,
is.
And if I remember correctly, that's the name of the book, or it was the tagline to the book, was the campus rape frenzy. That was a good one. And then number 37, a couple of 3 weeks after that, Publius was back on the show. So we did another interview with Miss Hulda. And then Y4.39, 2 weeks after our second interview with Publius, we had a conversation with a lady that runs a blog called The College Fix. And you need to go find that website, The College Fix. I continue to be on her subscription list, and it is absolutely fabulous. She has college student journalists on every major campus in the country, and she is very well trained. I don't know whether she has her PhD, but she's pretty high up there. Got almost 15 to 20 years experience as an investigative journalist. And her charter with the College Fix is to train young journalists on campus to do their own reporting, and then they bring it into this central spot called the College Fix and put it back out. And it is frightening. So a lot of the things that are going on college campuses is a tad frightening, and we need to know about it, and we need to know about it from the student's perspective. And that's what the College Fix brings you, is not somebody looking down on it trying to explain it, but from the students actually feeling the actions and the activity. And I was kind of prompted to that after that rape frenzy interview. Was to do the College Fix, which, by the way, she totally understood, agreed with, and absolutely endorsed the fact that that's what's going on. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So one thing leads to another. Those were a couple of really good shows. And then at Y41, sure enough, about 6 weeks later, here's old Nico popping back up again. So we had a conversation with Nico. That one was about sanctuary cities. So we focused with Nico a bit on sanctuary cities, and as the district attorney, he had some things to say, and he set us straight on some pieces of the law, which is always good. So Y4.45. This one was a biggie. I really didn't realize how biggie it was until we had the conversation. We talked to a fellow by the name of John Whitehead, who has written a book. He's done a lot. You need to check him out. He's done a lot, but he's written a book called Battlefield America.
There you go.
I carried that book around with me for 4 to 6 weeks, easy, after I had read it. And every place I went, I made sure people knew that they should read Battlefield America. That's, to me, was how insightful and impressive and a little bit scary that it was. And it was about the growth of the police. It is about the growth of the police state in the United States. And the fact that we already have a standing army. It's called the police force in conjunction with the federal government, your local police force. Battlefield America by John Whitehead. Listen to the interview. Y4.45. You can listen to the conversation. Highly recommend you get the book and read the book. Y4.49. We had a conversation with Deputy Chief, the Sheriff's Deputy Chief, Mr. Jimenez, about racism and statues and other nonsense that was going on, and a bit about sanctuary cities. So we used to talk to the sheriff, and now we talk to the sheriff's spokesperson,
Okay.
Mr. Jimenez. He was interesting. He was okay.
Yeah, it was. It was a good interview.
The very next show is titled The Eisenhower Farewell.
Oh,
And we focused on Dwight David Eisenhower's farewell message to the American people at the end of his presidency,
Absolutely magnificent.
warning us about the deep state, which we call the deep state today. He referred to it as the military-industrial complex, and it was growing and presenting a dark side to politics in the American presence. And who followed Dwight D. Eisenhower as president?
JFK.
John F. Kennedy. John F. Kennedy was assassinated, and we pretty well know it was by some element, some angle, something to do with what Eisenhower was referring to as his predecessor. Scary.
Yes.
Scary. And if we don't listen, if we can't filter out all the noise and listen to what we're really hearing and take it at face value that whoever's telling us it's telling us the truth, we're doomed for a even worse ride than we've had over the last
Absolutely.
50 years.
Absolutely. Check your sources, people.
Then we had Y5 at the beginning of this year, 3 in this fiscal year. So this September 11th coming up right there. Eisenhower was the second show of this fiscal year. There's a reason for that. Oh, I skipped Don Barnett. Sorry about that. The very first show of the year was Don Barnett, who is another world's foremost authority on immigration. And I've forgotten the think tank that he's with. My apologies, Don. But we had him on for a reason as the first of the year.
Something with the immigration studies.
Yeah, he's the Center for Immigration Studies of such and such a think tank. And a very bright and articulate guy and knows stuff way beyond what, that's what he does for a living. So we had him on the first show of the year, followed that with the Eisenhower Deep State on Purpose, and then had 2 shows with Nicola Hood, both of which we talked about the deep state. Our first 4 shows of the year were about what we currently call the deep state or the military-industrial complex. And the reason we did that was all of the pushback that was going on, still going on, against President Donald J. Trump. I wanted to know, where is this coming from? And that's the reason we're going down the path of all the presidents. How much we just talked about Tyler. John Tyler at the beginning of the show got huge, in effect, deep state, thoroughly entrenched politicians against his being the president.
That's right.
Because it happened too fast. They weren't ready for it.
Yeah.
Caught them by surprise. And then the 9th show of this year, and ongoing for a while there up until Christmas, we were talking about the Alamo and the history of the Alamo, defense of the Alamo. That's going to come up from time to time, coming up in 2018, because it's going to be a heated battle. And I won't get into it now, but we will spend some shows to get into it. So how was that for a year?
It was an excellent year, I'll tell you
pretty
what.
good.
I think all 3 of us did our. I'm going to say jobs, but I'm going to put it in air quotes because we're all volunteers.
Yeah.
But we did our best to bring forth information to our young audience that they're probably not going to get the same way we deliver it anywhere else.
Yeah,
That's true.
that's absolutely right.
They might get bits and pieces of it, but they're not going to get 3 intelligent voices that have done their homework and researched connecting the dots.
We did a lot of that this year.
That's
Connecting the dots. Absolutely. Yes.
that's the job.
Yes.
And sometimes, and if you'll remember, we did one show. I didn't bring it up, but I remember doing a show on connecting the dots.
Yes.
Where we talked about, wait a minute, that because when you hear somebody say connecting the dots, I don't even know whether they still have them anymore. those little
Yeah.
diagrams
that's
that you used to
right.
play, and you'd go from
Yep.
1 to 2 to 3 to 4, and you draw a little horse or you draw a little whatever it was, right? In the
Yep.
newspaper, you'd connect the dots and you'd wind up with a picture, right?
Right.
And so I brought up one of the things that I'll show you how crazy I think. What if I connect the wrong dots? What if I go from 1 to 4 to 3 to 9 to 17 back to 6? Now what have I got?
Scratch.
Maybe not. That's the point. Maybe I've got a whole different picture. And that's why I always say connecting the dots.
Yeah.
Because there's dots out there, and you can connect them one way and go through life with rose-colored glasses and everything's cool because the government said these dots are connected to these dots, and those dots over there that everybody else is talking about ain't got nothing to do with it. So ignore those dots and draw the picture that I'm showing you with these dots.
Yeah.
I'm
Get your
one of-
dots in a row.
I'm one of these people who say, wait a minute, I like all those dots over there. I'm like,
yeah.
I want those in the picture. I want to bring those in the picture.
Right.
So when you stop and think about it, connecting the dots is not as easy as you might think it is. And not only that, if you really want to understand something, connect the dots, draw the picture. What do you got? Okay, that's good. Set that aside. Throw all the dots back in the barrel. Pour them out on the ground again. Now reconnect the dots. Different from the way you did them the first time. Now what do you got? Oh, different picture. Not so pretty. Maybe those guys over there on the left or those guys over there on the right are, maybe they do have something to say. I better put that one aside. Put them all in. Keep throwing those dots in and reconnecting the dots until you personally, this goes back, way back to the beginning of the show when we talked about integrity. This goes back to being true to yourself. So you've got to be true to yourself. You got to know what you believe, and you can't let the left, the right, or the center, or anybody else tell you how to connect the dots.
Exactly. And don't be like me, folks. It was like maybe 5 or 7 years ago when I finally realized that I'm okay, that I am a person who is okay.
Now
it took me that long to have that
I'm
integrity.
I'm going to take you to the title of one of my shows.
Okay.
Who told you that?
Yeah, exactly. I remember that. I remember that one.
That was a fun show.
That was.
Because we tested what everybody thought they knew.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite questions in a conversation. When somebody says, well, blah, 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 and they're just dead on set that it's a fact, just like Uncle Bocce was about his integrity. Who told you that? You're absolutely right. I mean, I've known you less than that, so I'm real happy that for that to have happened. I guess I got either blessed or cursed. It depends on how you look at it. With that attitude at a very young age.
Good for you. Yeah.
So, but it, sort of. But it can make life challenging.
It sure can.
When you challenge the status quo. When I take you back to Dwight D. Eisenhower, understand I was old enough to hear what he said and fear it. And because it was the following year, my freshman year at the Naval Academy, when JFK got shot.
Yes, I remember exactly where I was.
And I was a very impressionable 18 years old.
Yeah.
Front row. Time to go. You have been listening to the Doc Owen Show. Thank you so much for having us. We really appreciate it. Now go out there this week and take care, pay attention, and God bless.
Bye-bye, folks. God bless.